Hello and welcome to my review of the entire full release range for Space Marines for Warhammer 40,000 from Games Workshop. Now in this review video, much like the Tyranid full army release review, I will be covering every single new Space Marine model that they've released since the Leviathan box set, and including the Leviathan box set. Much like the previous video, I will be looking at all the units individually. I have released reviews of all of these units individually now, so you can just type in, Brutalis Dreadnought to find the full review of that kit, including all the rules and things. A key point to make is that the Space Marine Codex was donated to the channel by Ed. Thank you, sir, for that. I would not have been able to cover the rules section in all of those reviews without that book, and initially I wasn't going to pick it up. Right here in front of you is over £450 worth of Space Marines if you include the full price of the Leviathan box set, and why wouldn't you? Space Marines are expensive, Warhammer is expensive. You're now looking at, £26 for a single plastic Space Marine, which is equivalent or sometimes more expensive than the forge-weld resin. A unit of 5, I think the cheapest here is £35 for 5 Space Marines, just normal standard Space Marines with about 100 parts. Long gone are the days where 10 Space Marines would cost you a tenner. They're way gone, over 20 years ago now. Let's get in a bit closer and have a look at all of these units. I'll go from left to right, much like I did in the new release review video. And we'll get a bit closer to the table, even though my arms are crazy long. So starting off here on the left, we've got the Infernus Space Marines. Yeah, it's a unit of 5 that's just been duplicated. So you're going to get, I guess, 5 twins, maybe 4 twins, because the Sergeant in these units, although has a very similar pose, you can just make it out with the legs. It's the legs that stand it apart, and it's one of the downsides with Primaris in general, that you can't, the hips are usually integrated with the legs rather than the torso being movable. And with the old Space Marines, that made all the difference, because you could really change the look and feel both in their head position and the torso of where they were moving. But this is very clear, they're the same model, but just, one's holding a knife, one's holding a pistol, and one's holding a grenade. Not really sure what he's doing there. It would have been cool if he had a blade there and a reverse grip, but yeah, the Infernus, did we really need them? I mean, they look cool in the trailer, I'll give them that, but yeah, they're just, who's going to use them, really? I mean, you might use them for some of the Horde armies, but even some of the Horde armies, like Tyranids and Eldar and Orcs even, have some heavy hitters, some heavily armoured Space Marine equivalents now. And Tau, they would be all but useless, because Tau are all about the battle suits and long-range firepower. So, questionable, their existence. I would have preferred another dedicated Melter Squad, maybe, and I was going to say it, because we've already got the dedicated Plasma Squad with the Hellblasters. Then moving over to the right, the Terminators. Wow, what a kit. It's great if you were able to pick up the Leviathan set and the multi-part kit for these, because you will get plenty of variation between the sergeants. They look very different poses. Some of the Leviathan kits have extra base furniture, I want to call it, or tactical rocks, tactical cliffs. Fantastic minis. Even the push to fit ones in the Leviathan set are good. And like I say, if you've got the multi-part kit separately, then there's a lot of variation, and it means you've already then got 10 Terminators ready for the assault Terminators that no doubt they'll announce. They've already announced the Deathwing, so here starts a brand new chapter of you know, larger Primaris sized Terminators. Fantastic kit if you're able to get it separately. Then keeping with the Terminator theme for a moment, we have the Chaplain. Of course we needed a new bigger sized Chaplain in Terminator armour. Chaplains have always looked fantastic, I think, in the range, especially the Terminator ones, and this one is alright. You know, it's a bit like the other Terminators. They're not massively better looking than what's been before, but they have got that size factor. You know, they now do match with the rest of your Primaris. They are bigger than the rest of your Primaris. You can imagine Primaris Space Marines being in these, not just Legacy Space Marines. In the Leviathan set, we had a Librarian. Fun fact, he is one of only 4 helmetless Space Marines in this entire collection before you. The other 3 being the Captain in Terminator armour, the Lieutenant in Phobos armour, I think, and then the Sergeant in the Infernus squad. We obviously needed a larger Librarian in Terminator armour, much like with the Chaplain, and we got it in the Leviathan box set. Speaking of which, the Captain in Terminator armour. Now this isn't the multi-part, multi-pose kit that we've been promised. That is on its way, along with the Scouts and other things, but it does the job. It works well with the Leviathan set. It's got what looks to be, I think, a Carnifex Screamer Killer. It's got what looks to be a Screamer Killer head or remains of some Tyranid creature on the base. He does stand head and shoulders above all of the other miniatures here as being the tallest other than the Dreadnoughts. Definitely a bit of a centerpiece for your Terminators until that new multi-part Captain comes out. It's a nice model. The sword's fantastic. There's a fair amount of detail. It does the job. And yeah, if you need a captain at the moment to lead your Terminators, that's a good choice. Speaking of captains, another captain. We've had kind of 3 captains, I guess, in this release. Of course, the one in the Leviathan set, the captain with Jump Pack, and then a hidden sort of captain in the Company Heroes box set. Now, I do beat up on the Heroes set as not being very good because of the lack of options and extra parts and things, but the one thing they did do right is the captain. I think it's fantastic on the dual tactical rock there, and they've done the Ancient and the Champion very well too. It's a great captain, plenty of options, a number of options for him as well, and again, there's a couple of other miniatures in the set like the Ancient, which would normally, you'd be paying £26, probably more for that Ancient, and then the Champion's pretty good. Maybe he's a Blade Guard, maybe he was a Blade Guard, maybe he's dropped his shield and forgot his shield today, I don't know, but that's quite a nice model too. The veterans are okay, but they're nothing massively special, and I would have preferred them to have a Tech Marine in there and an Apothecary, just standard ones, not anything crazy. I know we do have a Primaris Tech Marine about, but it would have been nice to see newer versions of those in this hero set, because it gives me the Command Squad vibes from the 90s feel, that kit. The Desolation Squad completely put me off the box set that was released way back in like 5-6 months ago with the Brutalis Dreadnought. It threw me off that set completely, because I just thought they looked funky. However, having built the kit, and of course I sometimes do buy kits that I don't like for many reasons, and one of them is to see if I can do things with them to make them look better, or I guess less worse, and that's what I believe I've done with these. Have the flaps open the correct way, have the missiles on the power plants, and they don't look as bad. They obviously don't look as good as the Devastators with grav cannons and las cannons and missile launchers and things, but you know, they're getting there. a few more tweaks. Maybe Games Workshop will go back to the specific weapons and give them bigger plasma cannons and things, and upgrade the las cannons, but we'll see. But they've definitely grown on me, but I definitely don't have as negative feelings towards them as I did when I first saw them. Getting back onto the single characters, the Lieutenant, we've got so many Lieutenants now. You've probably got about 5 in your collection at this point. Did we really need one? Don't think we did, but you know, this is one with a power fist, so if there was that gap in your force, again, nothing stopping you from getting a normal intercessor and, you know, grabbing a power fist from somewhere and a plasma pistol from somewhere and making your own. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to buy the individual kit just for that miniature. You can, of course, make your own. But the Biologist, again, works very well with your heavy intercessors and your eradicators. You know, if you're building kind of like a heavy, chunky army surrounded by Gravis, because Gravis don't look too bad anymore, then this is a fantastic model that was included in the Leviathan set. I think it works really well. I don't think it works necessarily well in that Leviathan set. Would have been cool to have, I don't know, an Apothecary in Terminator armor. Where's that? That would be quite cool and funky, and would set the scene for possibly a Grey Knights one, because they are quite specialised, aren't they? But still, this will go well with your heavy intercessors and your eradicators and your Gravis Space Marines. Moving on to my favourite kit of the whole of the new releases is the Sternguard Veteran Squad. Wow, what a kit. Absolutely fantastic. The most number of spare parts of any of these kits. I can't say enough good things about it. There's a number of reasons other than those spare parts. The poses, the way they look, the actual parts that are included. You know, you are getting Primaris sized Mark 6 helmet and also Mark 8 helmet, which is fantastic. We've seen this before though. We saw this in the Leviathan Sternguard. It's not necessarily new, but it is new for, you know, these Space Marines. Look, I've got another one here. This is from the Leviathan set. So it's nice to see nods to Mark 8 in the Sternguard, as you would expect. And it's a nice selection of Sternguard there, with including the force from the Leviathan set. My favourite kit out of all of these new releases. Before we talk about the Dreadnoughts at the back, let's just talk about the Jump Pack Intercessors. Disappointing kit, as I said in the new release video. They don't have many parts. You can pose their arms to some extent, and it just leaves me with a feeling of wanting those jump packs to be available to be purchased separately, so I can convert my current assault intercessors. When I thought about it, I don't have need of having assault intercessors. I can't see myself, you know, putting them in an expulsor or something, or a repulsor, and flying back, it's a flying tank obviously, you know, to the front lines, and then just deploying them because they've got more attacks. I'd rather put eradicators in there, or I'd rather put hellblasters, or you know, something, or Sternguard even, rather than assault intercessors. I feel like I would convert my current assault intercessors with jump packs if they made them available. So that was a bit of a disappointing kit. They don't look too bad though. At first I thought the poses were a bit odd, but once I built them and I've got the arms in the right way, they didn't turn out too badly. I think 15 in that new box set is a bit much though. You're going to have a lot of twins. Then the Captain, again, not as good as, I don't think this Captain is anywhere near as good as the one from the Company Heroes set, and I would argue that the Terminator Captain is better looking. It's okay, it's nice to have one, especially if you're building your force around Raven Guard or some kind of fast force made up of jump packs and Outriders and ATVs and things. It's nice to have that option, but I would have liked a Thunderhammer and Storm Shield war gear option in the box, which you don't get, unfortunately. Even Storm Shield and even Combat Shield or Storm Shield with the jump pack intercessors. And finally, let's talk about these Dreadnoughts. One really good Dreadnought and one bad Dreadnought. Can you guess which is which? I've said some bad things about the Ballistas Dreadnought, and I will continue to do so. It's very meh. It should have been like the saviour of the Leviathan box set. The Terminators are great, the Sternguard are alright, the Infernus are awful, and the Ballistas, unfortunately, is also awful. Looks-wise, it's very boring. For any of us that grew up in the 80s and 90s, it's trying to be a Mortis Dreadnought, and that's kind of what the Terminators are. The Terminators are just bigger Terminators. This Ballistas Dreadnought is just a bigger Mortis Dreadnought. When you look at the Dreadnought next to it, the Brutalis, and you can see the improvements that they've made to the Redemptor Dreadnought, one would wish that they would employ those with the Ballistas. I was hoping for like a missile rack on the top, or even some kind of extra weapon. I mean, the whole purpose of that Dreadnought right there is a ranged Dreadnought. So you'd expect some ranged weaponry other than the twin-link las cannon and the missile launcher. You'd want some better chest weapons. You'd want a missile rack. You'd want just something new. Maybe, I don't know, anti-air, because that's where it's going to be vulnerable from. But instead they've put the second only anti-air unit for Space Marines, the weapon, on a close combat Dreadnought. And again, delivery method. How are you going to deploy the Ballistas? How are you going to deploy the Brutalis when you don't have any Dreadnought drop pods and things? Maybe the Ballistas doesn't need that delivery method because it can just sit at the back and pop things, but it's whether it's going to be able to make up its points cost compared to a Brutalis, which may struggle to get into close combat before the game ends. Even putting las talons on the Ballistas, I know they're only 36-inch range, but that would be cool. Putting heavy bolters on there, or even the multi-melters from the Brutalis. I know a lot of people are holding out for a multi-part, multi-pose Ballistas Dreadnought, but I personally don't see that happening. The rules are the rules, and they don't have like plasma cannons or heavy bolters or anything like that. Maybe in a year or two they might do that. They might revisit the Ballistas and update the rules digitally and say, oh yeah, by the way, it can also take a twin-link plasma cannon or something like that. But I think there's more chance of them releasing like a Mortis pattern or ironclad version of the Redemptor. But anyway, moving on to the Brutalis. Lovely kit. Not my favourite kit out of this new release, but I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. Of course, it's a night and day difference to the Ballistas. If they don't release one in an army set as part of a second force, I would eventually pick up a second one and just have it with the fists. The only downside of this one is, of course, those fists. The fact that these talons have better rules than the fists, and that anti-air weapon up top. I would easily replace that with a rocket pod or missile system if they gave us the option. So in summary, my favourite unit out of the whole of the new releases, still the Sternguard, a couple of points down, not closely followed, but I would say the Terminators are next, and then the Brutalis Dreadnought. There's only a couple of bad apples in this new release, and only a couple of questionable choices. It's nice to see this as being progress. It is progress in that we are getting bigger Space Marines overall, but for Space Marines, their biggest seller with the most number of collectors, I expected more, and I always do, but that's Warhammer 40K for you. Horus Heresy consistently delivers, and other than a couple of points about Contemptor Dreadnoughts and Deredio Dreadnoughts, I mainly have more positive things to say about that game system than Warhammer 40K in its present form. But saying that, progress is progress, and this is a mainly positive release and step in the right direction. And I'm looking forward to the new releases that they have yet brought out, and I look forward to the new models that they are yet to release, like the Terminator Captain and the Scouts. And I have high hopes based on the current range for the new Terminators and any of the new characters that they're going to release in the future. What do you guys think of the whole of this Space Marine release? Please do put in the comments below what your favourite unit miniature in this Space Marine release is or was, which is your worst, and what you would like to see be released in the range. There's a lot of Primaris Space Marines at the moment. They're lacking in delivery methods. I think it's time Forge World announce their Primaris Overlord flyer, their Primaris Overlord Super Heavy flyer. There's enough Primaris around to warrant such a vehicle for the army. Please do put your thoughts and opinions down below. Thank you for joining me throughout this whole Space Marine journey. Thank you for watching. The Emperor protects.